Not usually my job, but... 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 Not usually my job, but...
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
On Earth farted at the same time. If everyone on Earth farted at the same time, gas might create the unprecedented global explosion. Human farts can contain trace amounts of highly flammable gas. If everyone
What have you done to Gorilla?
This is Buc-ee's. It's the largest gas station in the world. It was started back in the 80s by a guy named Beaver. I kid you not. He started this.
If your ear gets ripped off, you can actually take some cartilage from your rib cage. Then a doctor will carve it into the shape of an ear and place it into a pocket of skin on your forearm. Inside your arm, it develops and forms new blood vessels and skin. Once it is fully developed, the new ear is removed from your arm. The new blood vessels are attached to your ear hole, and the skin is carefully stitched to your head. If everyone on Earth farted at the same time, you might think the combined release of gas would create an unprecedented global explosion. But is this actually true? Well, human farts can contain trace amounts of highly flammable gas. But even if all 8 billion people released this gas, it still wouldn't be enough to have a serious impact. It would just cause loud sounds and intense smells. If everyone on Earth farted, if you get rabies, the virus travels from the wound to your brain. As it reaches your brain, you'll start to experience flu-like symptoms. Over time, it can cause confusion, agitation, and even a fear of water. And this fear of water makes swallowing almost impossible, leading to excessive saliva that foams out of the mouth. After a while, you'll go into a coma, and with no cure, you'll eventually die. If you curl your tongue,
Hey guys, I don't know.
In 2018, a woman was sucked out of a window on a Southwest flight headed to Dallas. It happened when an engine broke in the air, causing debris to break a window. This caused the cabin to depressurize and suck the nearby woman out of the plane. The other passengers held on to her as she hung halfway out, and after a few minutes, they were able to get her back into the plane, but she had severe head trauma, which unfortunately caused her to die. An epilator works by if a tick bites you, and In 1848, a large iron rod drove through the face and head of a man while he was working. Right before you die, imagine you were robbing. If you bend the bear, dentist, lipos. Ancient doctors were known to taste earwax, drink another person's urine, and would even smell their poop. If you dropped a nuke into an active volcano, it would most likely just melt before it could detonate. But if the nuke was transported into the magma chamber and timed just right, the intense explosion could vaporize the lava, turning it into a superheated gas. This lava vapor would rapidly expand, causing an enormous pressure wave. The explosion would send molten rock, ash, and gas high into the nuke was transported into the magma chamber and timed just right. The intense explosion could vaporize the lava, turning it into a superheated gas. This lava vapor would rapidly expand, causing an enormous pressure wave. The explosion would send molten rock, ash, and gas high into the atmosphere, causing an enormous pressure wave. The explosion would send molten rock, ash, and gas high into the atmosphere. If you dropped a nuke, if you fall off of a cruise ship, if you touch a porcupine, you'll get a bunch of their quills stuck in your skin. And these quills are barbed, making them really hard to remove once they're in. If you try to just rip them out, they can become buried deep enough to damage your skin and cause an infection. Instead, carefully use tweezers to grab the quill close to the skin and pull in the direction that it entered. If you touch a porcupine, this is an F0 tornado. If you plucked out a single strand of your hair, if you plucked out a single strand of your hair, if you're in a car that's sinking, most people would try to open the door to escape. But this is nearly impossible because of the pressure of the water. Instead, you should focus on the windows. If they're electric, try to lower them quickly before the system fails. If the windows don't open, use a sharp object to break the glass, targeting the center. And if all else fails, wait until the car is fully submerged. By this time, the pressure should have equalized, allowing the door to open more easily. If you're in a car that's sinking, when an eyelash falls into when you see something, the light passes through the clear front layer of your eye. This layer, the cornea, acts like a key. The army ant is placed on the wound and positioned so its jaws. A thief can use a small device to secretly scan and steal your credit card information. This pickpocketing, this tooth, your hair could get caught. A heart attack happens. This nose job begins with a surgeon. If you're trapped, a doctor can stick a curved tooth. A doctor If your feet are on the dashboard and the airbag deploys, it shoots out at over 200 miles per hour. This intense speed propels your feet and legs upwards and back towards your face and chest. Your legs slam into your upper body and can break your bones, and your knees can hit your head so hard that it can cause permanent damage to your brain. The force of this can also contort your pelvis and twist your spine. If you look inside a wart, if you walk barefoot, if you stopped, as millions of sperm flood the reproductive tract, only a few hundred of them will even reach. If a mouse eats food, a strand of hair can embed itself so far into your skin that you have to use tweezers to remove it. A tree's root system is. You could save your poop and donate it to someone who has an infection in their intestines. Your sample would be screened when you could save your poop and you could save your poop and donate it to someone who has an infection in their intestine. When you use an inhaler, a cloud of medicine. When you use an inhaler. If the bar came loose while you were riding a roller coaster, you'd probably expect to immediately fall out. But that probably wouldn't happen. You see, as you're being pulled into the loop, gravity tries to pull you down towards the ground. But because of the speed you're going and the direction of the tracks, a special force actually pushes you further down, outweighing the pull of gravity and keeping you in your seat. If the bar came loose while you were, if your face is completely covered, if you fold a piece of paper, if you have a cold, the blood vessels, a pierced ear, chest compressions for this procedure. If your thumb can bend all the way back like this, you might think it's broken. But this flexibility is likely caused by unique traits in the genes responsible for collagen. Some people compulsively eat their own hair until it becomes trapped in their stomach. This happens inside. Some people inside. When your umbilical cord is cut, the tissue inside the hole can sometimes protrude outwards, which results in what's known as an outie belly button. But even if the tissue does heal inward, at any point in your life, a typical bullet. If a beetle somehow got underneath your a typical bullet will travel at speeds up to 20. If you have a bunion, when you put coins into a vent, when a performer walks, this is a sinkhole. If you shoot at snakes will goosebumps happen when Pinocchio lies, his nose grows. So if you take a pill with a tiny camera inside, it travels through your body while taking detailed pictures, and eventually it makes its way out. But on rare occasions, it can actually get stuck inside you. When this happens, the pill gets lodged in places where the intestines narrow and can cause a blockage. Now, most of these still eventually pass by themselves, but in some cases, the pill can remain stuck inside for months and requires a surgery to remove. If you shoot a gun at a sharp blade, some people think it would shatter on impact. If you took the tallest building in the world and tried to reach the Titanic, you would actually need 5 of them stacked together to make it. Now, the Titanic's. When you shoot a gun with a silencer on the end, the bullet travels down the barrel, followed by high-pressure gases. As these gases exit the barrel into the silencer, they are directed into a series of compartments. Here, the gases expand and cool, which drastically reduces their speed and pressure by the time they leave the silencer. This lowers the intensity of the shockwave, which significantly reduces the sound of the shot. If you stick your tongue, when you pull the pin on a fire extinguisher, it releases a safety lever that opens a valve when pushed down. Now, this valve releases the built-up pressure inside, which starts to pull the dry chemical powder in the bottom. This powder is then sucked up a siphon tube as the pressure propels it to the very top into the nozzle. Once the powder exits the nozzle, it forms a cloud that covers the fire. Mice have been known to crawl up your plumbing and in. When you put a coffee pot, if you have frequent nosebleeds, there's a crazy if you looked inside, a contact lens can sometimes slip up under. If you could look inside of an escalator, if you're really short, a doctor can make a small incision into your thigh and carefully break your femur in half. Then the ends of the broken bone are gradually and slowly separated, at which point a rod is inserted to hold the bones in position. This stimulates the body to grow new bone in the gap, inching you up over time. Soft tissues like muscles and nerves also grow to accommodate the increased length. Once everything has hardened and strengthened, you'll be a taller version of your old self. When a horseshoe is fit, if you cut a pilonidal cyst in half, you'd probably find a clump of hair inside. Now, these hairs typically fall from your head. An IV goes directly into your. If you stepped, an earthquake bed will swap. When a wound begins to heal, new tissue starts. If you lose an adult tooth, if you cut this long little muscle, when an animal dies, if you get a fish hook caught in your finger, most people will just try to pull it out. But that might not work because hooks typically have a barb on the end. Instead, you should gently nudge it upwards until the barb is more visible on the opposite side. This will allow you to easily cut off the end of the barb, at which point the hook can easily slide out. Why don't skipping stones sink when they touch? A dislocated jaw pops out of its normal position at the joint, which sort of disconnects it from the skull. In this position, the jaw hangs awkwardly, making it incredibly painful to move. Now, if it's not too bad, you can bite down on gauze to stabilize the jaw, then carefully push the chin back into place. But in severe cases, you'll need a doctor to essentially rehinge your jaw by forcefully shoving it back into place. If you get a really bad burn, a doctor could if you lose your arm, a doctor can surgically place a titanium implant in. If you have hammer toe, an amoeba could enter through your when you insert a pen. If you pluck an eyelash, when you set a bear trap, the jaws are pushed back into place and held by a powerful spring. Then, the sensitive trigger plate is carefully adjusted and set through a series of screws. Once enough pressure is placed on the plate, the jaws will release, closing around the bear's limb. And since the trap is securely attached in the ground, the bear typically gets stuck and can't escape. If you touch a cactus, you'll probably get the spine stuck in your skin. And if you try to pull them out, you can actually break them off in your flesh because they're so fragile. So instead, you can actually break them off in your flesh because they're so fragile. So instead, you should apply a layer of glue over the area. Once it is dried, quickly peel it off in a smooth motion. This will pull out the spines evenly, causing them to stay intact. Neuralink starts if you lose. By puncturing a hole in the side of the cow, the farmer is then able to insert a tube. Now, this is done on cows that are extremely bloated due to an accumulation of gas in their digestion. A doctor can place if you get a ring stuck on when a baby tooth If you could open up the Statue of Liberty, you'd find the ant's stomach will swell up to several times the normal size as they continue to overeat. And they do this so they can be a literal storage unit. You see, these ants gorge themselves so they can feed the whole colony in areas where food can be scarce. When the food is needed, they just regurgitate part of it up to feed the other ants. If you sneeze while eating, sometimes the food can come out of your nose. Now this happens because a dentist cuts a flap in your gums. If you're in a free-falling elevator, most people think that jumping right before it hits the ground will save your life. But does this actually work? Well, if an elevator even happened to fall like this, timing your jump perfectly would be nearly impossible for many reasons. Instead, the best thing to do is lay completely flat on the floor to distribute the force of falling evenly over your entire body. When a zipper gets This is the first layer of your skin, and it acts as a barrier against the environment, repelling water and blocking out harmful germs. A surgeon makes an incision over. If your wisdom teeth are impacted, they start to grow in your jaw at an angle. This misalignment causes them to become trapped under your gums. As they continue to grow at an angle, they can push against the other teeth, forcing them to become crowded and possibly even crooked. If not removed, the impacted teeth can cause the gums to become painfully swollen, and this often leads to infection. A blackhead can be forced out by a special tool. When you take a bite of food and swallow it, it travels down the esophagus and into your stomach. There, acids turn the food into a semi-liquid paste before it's sent down to the intestines. If a seed somehow gets into your ear, when you put a cartridge into a revolver, it fits into a hole on the cylinder, which is then pushed back into place. As the trigger is pulled, the cylinder rotates, positioning the cartridge in line with the barrel and the firing pin. The hammer, cocked and released by the trigger pull, hits the firing pin, which strikes the primer on the cartridge. This ignites the gunpowder, creating a rapid expansion of gases that propels the bullet forward through the barrel. If you stick a Q-tip too far into your ear, you can actually poke through your eardrum. And this is extremely painful because the ear canal is lined with delicate, sensitive skin that can easily be torn. Q-tip usage can also impact the wax and push it deep into the canal in front of the eardrum. This can lead to intense pain and could result in hearing loss. If your eyeballs fully, LASIK starts with when a wound gets stapled, a doctor holds the edges of the area shut. When you turn on an AC unit, it sucks in the warm air. A doctor inserts the microchip between your thumb and index finger using a device similar to a syringe. Now, these chips can actually be really helpful tools, and they utilize the same technology used in phone payments. With this tiny device, your body essentially becomes a contactless key. It can open doors using sensors and can even start a car. They last anywhere from 10 to 20 years and can be removed with a small incision in the skin. If a super loud noise enters your ear, as the food enters, if you feel a blockage in your ear, you might have a huge chunk of earwax stuck in the canal. If you have a ganglion cyst, a doctor can make an incision on top of the area. These fluid-filled sacs are If you somehow removed all of the blood vessels in your body and tied them together, you might think it would be about this long. But the human body, if you accidentally touched a table, when you turn the key in the ignition of a car, it sends a signal to the car's battery, telling it to release electrical power to the starter. The starter then cranks the engine as the fuel system injects gas into the combustion chamber. At the same time, the spark plugs create sparks, which ignites the gas, resulting in a controlled explosion. This jump starts the engine to start running, and the car turns on. If you twist and fall, Most people think turtles can just slip out. If you were shot with a
Tutorial for fun.
This is a guinea worm. If you get shot with a taser, two dart-like electrodes bury into your skin. These darts are connected to the gun with a wire that sends a high-voltage, low-current electrical charge. Once the charge has traveled up the wire and reaches your body, it takes over the neuromuscular system, causing immediate and overwhelming muscle contractions. This electrical pulse temporarily paralyzes you without causing permanent harm. If you lose your hand, when you pull the pin on a hand grenade, the ridges on a key might look random, but if you ingest food that's contaminated with tapeworm egg, if you lose your thumb, and if you looked inside of a shotgun shell, you'd see that it's actually, these are scabies. When a magician swallows a sword, they completely suppress their gag reflex as it enters their throat. The blade is then carefully aligned as the performer leans back to straighten the natural curve of the esophagus. Then, the performer pushes the sword down the esophagus, being cautious not to enter the trachea. The sword is then stopped right before it reaches the stomach and carefully pulled back up the throat. When a magician swallows a sword, when you shave with a normal razor, the multiple blades pass over you. If you have a blood clot, when you use a derma roller, if you shot a gun at another gun and the bullets happen to collide, they would most likely shatter due to the high-speed impact. But sometimes, if the bullets and the conditions were just right, the intense heat and pressure of the collision could cause the bullets to fuse together into one lump of. If you pass out, when you pump gas in,